Hello everyone and welcome to the first ever Guardians of Australia review. This review series will be called For Your Consideration, and the first title we're reviewing is none other than Resident Evil 7 BIOHAZARD. Now before we begin, I'd like to point out some things about this review. I played the entire game on low settings on PC at 60 frames a second, and also I played it on a fresh run of MADHOUSE difficulty. I literally bought it, I downloaded it, and I loaded it up on MADHOUSE. I don't exactly recommend the majority of people play it right off the gate on MADHOUSE, but I do recommend everyone at least experience it. That's a double thing I just kind of explained, but I'll get back to it. Also, the footage you're probably looking at is all of the trailer footage that's been compiled by a YouTube user known as MK Fire and Ice, so shout out to them. Anyway, let's begin. So the Resident Evil franchise hasn't been too hot lately. Now, to be fair, the franchise has done something that very few people can really say they've done, which is they've not only created a genre, survival horror, with the original Resident Evil, but they also reinvented it with Resident Evil 4, and then they perfected it with Resident Evil Remake. So where does Resident Evil 7 fit in? Well, the best way I can describe it to you is that Resident Evil 7 takes Remake as its basis and foundation. You can't go wrong with that. And then it flavors in a lot of the flair and dramatic and casual appeal of 4 into this game. Make no mistake though, it never gets super action oriented on even Resident Evil 4's starting area. Remake still feels intimate, and Resident Evil 7 feels just like Remake. Everything in Resident Evil 7 is a threat to you. Even the house. Even just the wind blowing feels like something is out there. And that is Resident Evil 7's strongest point. But before we go any further, let's talk about what the plot revolves around. Resident Evil 7 does canonically take place after Resident Evil 6 in the year 2017. I kind of forget when Resident Evil 6 takes place, but it's best we all forget about it. Now, Resident Evil 7, ironically enough, takes after Resident Evil 4 in this regard. Resident Evil 4 was seen as not only as a reinvention of the series, but also as a soft reboot. Sure, it contained Leon Kennedy, sure it contained a few other familiar characters, but it was a self-contained story, and it kind of moved the franchise in a different direction, adding new lore as well as referencing old lore. Resident Evil 7 is the exact same. It takes place in its own self-contained environment, its own story, its own characters, but there's enough connections there, as well as some questions that you ask yourself that connects back to the old series. So you play as Ethan Winters, and you have one objective and one objective only. You've received a strange email about your deceased wife. She's out there somewhere, she's been gone for 3 years, and you need to find out what's going on. So you travel to Dulvey, Louisiana, I believe, to the Baker estate. Now you don't exactly know that, but let's not pussyfoot around it. This is the Baker estate. And they don't want you there. The Bakers act as the most intimate threats the Resident Evil series has ever seen, more so than Mr. X and more so than Nemesis. The plot basically just revolves around Ethan exploring the house, exploring its secrets, exploring its depths, and uncovering the mystery behind the Bakers, their unusual abilities, as well as the more common enemy variants you'll encounter known as the Molded. And as you progress through the story, you will eventually uncover piece by piece the puzzle to the story as a whole and how it connects to the franchise as a whole. But to the more astute players and to general fans, you'll actually be able to uncover the plot pretty early. Hell, the twist is actually given away fairly early on, but only if you know what to look for and only if you're smart about it. That being said, there's a lot more to this story that's cool, but that's spoiler territory, so we won't go into that. Instead, let's talk about the first strongest aspect of Resident Evil 7, and that's its audio design. From the doors creaking open, to the floorboards creaking under your feet, to hearing footsteps, the wind blowing, brushes rustling as you walk through them, the audio design in Resident Evil 7 is impeccable. Not more so than the voice acting. The Bakers are unbelievably well voice acted, whether you listen to it in English or Japanese. The English audio dub, especially, deserves huge shoutouts to whoever voices the Bakers and Ethan especially. But for now, let's focus on the Bakers. There's a particular scene early on in the game. This isn't a spoiler. Everyone has to come across this. You cannot miss it. Hell, it's in a lot of the trailers. It's probably in the footage you've just seen. And it's the dinner scene where Ethan is sat down with the Bakers and they're eating. The audio design in that scene, the voice acting direction in that scene sells you that the Bakers are real. That they aren't human, but they have the appearance of humans. And they are what's going to give you the most trouble throughout this game. Other things too about the audio is incredible. Now do remember, the Resident Evil series, even at its weakest points, has always had strong audio, but Resident Evil 7 deserves a special highlight, because nothing, except Remake, I'll give Remake and 4 a pass on this, but only 7 has ambience, and it does ambience so well that you question everything. You could be walking down a straight corridor and hear nothing except the sound of your footsteps and things rattling because of your footsteps, and you have to wonder, are you truly alone, or is there something there waiting for you as you turn a corner, as you walk down a dark hallway, as you inspect something? There is something so magical and so wonderful about the audio design that Capcom deserves nothing but praise for it, and it can only be achieved through just a lot of hard work, and props to Capcom for that. Because, as you all know, horror is subjective. Horror can be taken in many forms, whether it be jump scares, whether it be overwhelming odds, but Resident Evil 7 does its atmosphere, and gives its atmosphere a horror vibe. You feel tense, you feel dread with every step, because the audio design is amazing. Doors creak open even if you're not the one doing it. So you ask yourself, who? What's doing that? The Bakers too, when they're chasing you around, say interesting and threatening things, they growl, and they don't exactly feel like they're all there. Ethan's voice actor especially makes Ethan so human and so believable that he becomes such an endearing character, more than a blank slate and drive for your character rather than, a character. Ethan is a person because of the audio design rather than it's you. And Ethan's just delivering quips because of, predestined voice lines and whatnot. But I've been rambling on about the audio design. But one last time, it deserves nothing but praise, especially the music, because while there's not much music, the music kicks in at the right place, at the right time, on top of the ambience and the sound effects, especially the guns. When you fire a gun, you feel good. When you land a headshot, you feel even better. But let's leave it at that for now. Audio design isn't strong by itself, even though in this game it is. Audio design needs to be coupled with one other thing to make it special, and that's the graphics. The visual design in Resident Evil 7 is actually pretty good. It's a lot better than let's be honest, it's a lot better than a lot of the modern Resident Evil games right now. It's never going to touch Remake because it's unfair. Remake has pre-rendered backgrounds and that's never looking bad, ever. Even the character models of Remake trump Resident Evil 7. However, Resident Evil 7 has some of the best facial animations I have ever seen. That might be a stretch, of course, because there's certainly other better animations out there. However, There are certain cutscenes in which the game just zooms up close on characters while they're talking, while they're emoting, and it feels good. It makes them feel believable. And you can see them frown, you see them wrinkle, you see them crack a smile. It is amazing. That being said, though, graphics as a whole is actually pretty consistent and pretty well done, even at the lower settings. Remember, this game I played on PC and I played at the lower settings, and everything looks shockingly good. And it is also incredibly well optimized for PC, so even a trash can computer like mine can run this game pretty solid. And if you can't run it at a solid 60, you can definitely run it at a solid 30 and still get a good graphical quality out of it, even at the lower settings. Breaking boxes, you see it splinter apart. Shooting guns, you see the animation. You see Ethan pull back. You see the haze coming out of the muzzle when you fire it. Characters animate so beautifully in this game, especially the enemies. The bakers go through drastic transitions, and when you damage them, or they do damage to you, the damage stays until you heal. And some of the damage is amazing. It can be just as simple as scratches or holes in your hand, missing cloth, to outright hives on your skin because you've been bitten by bugs or something. There is amazing attention to detail to the graphical design. Now, a lot of people can say that it looks drab. And yes, that is true. Remember, it is a horror game, but not only that, it is based on Western horror, particularly like the Blair Witch Project, or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and even Saw. So, a lot of the griminess, a lot of the whole, I don't know, the darkness and drab feeling of Resident Evil 7 probably comes from that artistic design. But like I said, it fits what this game wants to be, and it does it well. So I'll give it a pass on that. But like I said, it's not for everyone. That being said, the graphics aren't always 100%, on the lower settings at least. Enemies can glitch through walls and doors, and it can really ruin the immersion. You could open a door and out of nowhere you'll just see a head just sticking through. Not exactly something you want to see in a horror game, because it causes a comedic effect more than a horrifying one. Unless you're not expecting it, of course. Examining items up close can be a little jarring, and shadows in particular are a mess at the lower settings. Why? Because the shadows kind of freak out. What do I mean by this? This is most apparent when you play at the start of the game, where you're driving through and out of nowhere the shadows just cannot control themselves and continually move back and forth even if you are not moving, and it causes a strange, almost jarring effect on the player. But other than that, it's a very minor thing, and it's probably only apparent on the lower settings. So do take that as at a grain of salt. That being said, when you examine some textures, even on the highest settings, you can tell they're a little low res, and sometimes textures just don't pop in, especially when you notice a molded spawning out. It's a really weird thing, but like I said, that's okay. Not every game is perfect, and Resident Evil 7's graphics hold up as strong as they possibly can with a few blemishes on the side. So we come to the final and most important part of the Resident Evil game, and that's the gameplay. How does this game hold up? Is it the Resident Evil everyone's been clamoring for, or is it just a frustrating mess? Well, it's a little bit of both, sadly. On Madhouse only, of course. I don't mean this in a bad way, because believe it or not, Madhouse, even on your first playthrough, even blind, it is an incredible ride. It is thrilling, it is exciting, and it is tense and horrifying. What do I mean by this? Well, the game is fair. That is the best way I can put it. You feel vulnerable, but at the same time the game gives you enough ammo, enough healing, enough crafting items, and eventually enough weapons that you can deal with every fight and every boss encounter moment to moment. Because generally those encounters you will be drained of either health or ammo, or if you're unlucky, both. But luckily the game is smart and fair enough to always restock you just enough that careful play and the occasional cowardice will allow you to survive and fight your next battle without much hassle. So as I said before, this game is built based on remake. So when you explore the Baker estate, you will encounter puzzles, although they are straightforward except for 2 specific encounters. But even then, you may not have much trouble because I'm bad at puzzles. That being said, as you explore, you will encounter puzzles, you will encounter trapdoors, you will encounter strange secrets that any Resident Evil fan will be like, hey, yeah, that's like remake. Hey, look at this stupid door. It requires a stupid lock and a key, a very specific key. I'll get it. And it's hidden out of the way, and it's hidden in stupid places that only Resident Evil fans can crack a smile at. Hell, there's even cranks in this game, just in case you don't miss them enough. That being said, though, the gameplay isn't perfect. Because it's built around Remake's whole deal and as its foundation, while it's solid, it does come with its weaknesses. And that weakness is primarily backtracking. Again, on Madhouse only. On normal and easy, you won't need to backtrack as much. On Madhouse, you'll find that you're not juggling your inventory properly. And inventory is a huge sticking point in this game in particular. Funny enough, Resident Evil 7 contains the second best inventory system of the series, the first being the attaché case. The attaché case allowed you to do something wonderful. It allowed you to have a full inventory as well as juggle inventory you pick up on the go, combine, reload, discard, what have you. 7, not so much. While you can move around and adjust for space, you will eventually either have to make a trip back or sacrifice some items if you found a key item or something you really want. This sucks and puts a whole dampener on the pacing of the game as a whole, because the game is paced and directed very well. Moment to moment, you are afraid, and the big payoffs are always satisfying. Except maybe the last boss. But then again, the Resident Evil franchise has never been known for the last boss encounters, except for 4, again. That being said, what about the influences of 4? Well, despite its change to first person, it's a lot like Resident Evil 4 in a lot of ways. The first way is the aiming system. For anyone that's ever played Resident Evil 4, and to a lesser extent Resident Evil 5, you plant your feet on the ground, you aim your gun, and there's the laser reticule. You fire, the laser reticule goes away, and then it reappears for a split second later. And you keep firing, unless you just choose to hold down the fire button, in which case every subsequent shot is inaccurate. This is very much the same in Resident Evil 7. Just because you're in first person, just because you have unbelievable degree of control over your character and you're fine aiming, doesn't mean you'll always be wanting to shoot all the time. Yes, the hip firing is okay, but it is nowhere near as accurate as fine aiming. Remember, in Resident Evil 7 you can move and shoot, but the game heavily discourages you from doing so. Because when you move, it's harder to track your shots, and when you fire your shot, it goes back into the hip fire, and you have to wait a second before Ethan recenters himself and goes back into his fine aiming form, just like in Resident Evil 4. And just like in Resident Evil 4, the enemies behave a lot like the Ganado, in which they will slowly and menacingly walk or run towards you, get off a strike maybe, or they will just simply continue walking towards you as you aim at them and block. They will hold their hands to block their face as they juke and jive towards you to get a hit in. Anyone that's played Resident Evil 4 and 5, you will understand what I'm talking about. And when they do get a hit in, there's a weird period of cooldown where they just kind of stare at you, giving you enough time to heal or to back away, like in every Resident Evil 4, 5, and to a lesser extent, 6. This being said, however, this doesn't carry over to one specific enemy type, and this enemy type will make your life in Madhouse a living nightmare, and that's the four-legged molded, and they are introduced incredibly early on in Madhouse, whereas on normal and easy, they aren't introduced until nearly a third of the way through. while you're still in their state. The four-legged mortar attack and move so fast that on Madhouse you do not have enough time to heal or to even fight back. They can kill you in less than 2 hits. And not only that, they are the #1 most occurring ambush enemy type, whether it be from interacting with a key item or picking up a secret item. You can guarantee that a four-legged mortar will just appear out of nowhere and attack. And sometimes you just cannot protect yourself. The four-legged mortar are just broken on Madhouse, and I feel like they are the worst enemy type to deal with, as every other enemy type is actually enjoyable to fight. That being said though, the boss encounters of Resident Evil 7 are actually very well done. The Bakers have been given unique encounters in every unique section that they belong to in the Baker estate. Jack, for example, haunts you throughout the house as a nemesis, Mr. X sort of type. He breaks down walls, he kicks open doors, he is relentless in his pursuit, and it is very hard to break free. Whereas Marguerite patrols only one spot, but when she spots you, she sends out her incessant minions that are impossible to either fight off, so you have no choice but to run and hide from her, or just be ballsy and run through her. Whereas Lucas has designed a very special set of traps and puzzles for you to deal with. That pretty much sums up all of the possible encounters you will pretty much come across in Resident Evil 7. Now, one last thing before we move on is that Resident Evil 7 also contains a crafting system. It's not the most in-depth crafting system, but it is a crafting system you should take advantage of nonetheless. There are 3 items you need to take into account. It's the chem fluid, the strong chem fluid, and the separating agent. Utilizing these 3 items along with handgun ammo or healing items, along with gunpowder and herbs, which is the basic component, you can create handgun ammo, enhanced handgun ammo, grenade launcher rounds, flamethrower rounds, or more healing items, or you can break it down and create something else you might have little of compared to the item you have a lot of. So in the end, is this game consumer friendly? Well, luckily, yes it is. On Madhouse, it took me up to 15 hours to beat the game. 15 on a blind full playthrough. On medium, it'll take about 10 hours. On easy, 8. This is incredibly meaty for any single-player survival horror game or any single-player game in general. But not only that, once you beat the game, you unlock post-game unlocks. And this will inevitably shorten your time from 15 all the way down to 4 if you are fast and smart enough. So that about does it for the Resident Evil 7 review. So thank you guys for watching and listening. I should also mention that, oh look, my review ended.